about is flipping dead. So we thought we'd do it live. So as we do for everybody that is joining in, if you're brand new, make sure you go to National RE Invest. You can always register, attend our meetings when we do the real estate association meetings, or you can always join us here live. And we're going to have a specific time every single time, uh, 3 times a week, where we're going to talk about topics that kind of affect the real estate industry as a whole. Today's topic happens to be is flipping dead for 2023. So why do I say that 2023 already? Well, we're in the fourth quarter of 2022. So if you're not planning on having a great 2023, guess what's going to happen? You're going to fall short, because if you're doing flips, if you're building a rental portfolio, your 2023 starts now. I mean, it better get started in October and November to plan for next year. So that's why if you're buying properties today, or if you're thinking about buying properties today, that's going to make your February, March, or April either good, or it's going to make it bad, because that's kind of the lag time. That's the shelf time you need to buy a property, to get it rehabbed, to put it back on the market. Remember, today we're talking about flipping, but if you're around us for any length of time, flipping is running on a treadmill. Owning rental properties or owning properties that you're going to Airbnb out, that's your long-term wealth. There's one thing and one thing that matters. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep, meaning what is your cash flow every single month. That's one thing that matters. And if you've been around me for any length of time, you've heard me say it over and over again. It's not the amount of money that you make. It's the amount of money you keep. And remember, that if you take care of real estate for the first 5 years, real estate will take care of you for the rest of your life. So if you take care of real estate for the first 5 years, what am I saying by that? What I'm saying is the properties that you keep, that is your wealth. But today we're talking about specifically about flips. So why am I talking specifically about flips and flips in 2023? Because properties that you have bought, that you may be in the process of buying, or you may think about investing. So let's first look at the market conditions. Right? So there is pre-corona market and there is post-corona market. So pre-corona market in most parts of the country after 2011 through 2012, the market turned, meaning we were in a down market from 2007 or 2008, depending on what part of the country you were. So you have to think about what are the leading places of real estate, meaning if you are on the West Coast, generally West Coast, which is the California market, the Seattle market, the market which is south part of West Coast, which is going to be your Phoenix market, your Vegas market. Those are going to be the leading markets, meaning change happens there first, and then it starts spreading across the country. Then the change is going to go towards Texas, Florida, and then it's going to kind of circle around and come towards the middle part of the country. So if you need to understand real estate, you need to understand the context in which we're talking about, meaning that why does California get affected the first? Well, guess where prices go up first? It's going to be in the California market. It's going to be in the Phoenix market. It's going to be the Vegas market. It's going to be in the Florida market. And the reason behind that is because that's where trends start. That's where you have people with a lot of excitement, that you generally have people with more money compared to the rest of the part of the country. So a lot of those trends, the upward trends and the downward trends happen to be in the hottest markets in the country. That has historically been the rule. Generally, you will not see the middle part of the country go down first. Generally, you're going to see kind of the edges where the market is on the fringe, meaning where the prices are extremely, extremely high. Something like Miami is a perfect example of that, that those markets are going to get beat first. So this is prior to Corona. So when the market turned, it turned in 2011, meaning properties started going up again in the California and in some of the Phoenix markets, some of those markets. It caught up in the Midwest. So if you take places like Chicago, right, where we're headquartered out of, something like Chicago's, you take Cleveland, you take Philly, you take Columbus market, you take some of these, the mid part of the country markets, the boring markets generally, the Midwest or going towards the East, generally these markets will be the next ones to turn, right? So in the Chicago market, for example, the market started turning in 2012. And why do I say that? I say that because I want to put this in context. If you look at any YouTube headline, oh my God, the market's crashing. Oh my God, everything's over. Oh my God, there's a 25% decline in prices, right? So if you look at even during the worst of the worst, when was the worst time that we had a really, really, really biggest devastation events in U.S. history? Not just real estate, not just stock market. One was back in the stock market crash of the 30s, which was the depression that led to the depression, and then next was in 2007 or 8, whatever you want to call it, depending on the part of the country you were in. So if you were on the fringes, meaning if you're in the east, if you're on the West Coast, down in Phoenix area, down in Florida area, some of the hottest markets of the country, your recession started earlier than it came to the Chicago market and the Midwest markets in general. So the reason I say that is this, that after we came out of that, which was a cleansing cycle, even at that time, if you look at how many properties at any given one time were in foreclosure, meaning how many people at any given one time, the number was anywhere from 5% to 8% at the max, right? It was 5% for 8%. Yet, what did it seem like? Oh my God, every other property is in trouble, right? Was that the case? No, that most Americans did not lose their homes. And that was the worst of it in our lifetimes, I'm talking about, which was 2007, 2008, 9, led into 10, and then gradually the market started turning. People had overpaid for properties that they should have never bought to begin with. Now, if we blame Wall Street, which is, if you've watched the movie Big Short, you'll kind of understand the historical context of it and what happened is depicted beautifully in that particular movie. But otherwise, people had made some bad choices. Now, there were some other people that got laid off. In fact, millions of other people got laid off because if you're working at Home Depot, nobody walks in to buy a lot of lumber. Nobody walks in to support Home Depot to do a lot of purchasing because the housing in a slump. Guess what? You may get laid off as a factor. So you have the first effect of people overpaying for properties and not being able to afford the mortgage, and then the collateral damage. So those were kind of the two factors that took place. Now, who is to blame? At the end of the day, it lies with our individual responsibilities. That's what I feel. You may feel differently. Oh, they were offered teaser rates, or Wall Street was giving out money, basically, like donuts, free donuts, whatever the case. People signed up for the mortgage. So that was kind of what happened. We go into, nobody obviously knew about Corona, expected Corona. Corona happened. Now, in the early part of Corona, clearly everything came to a standstill. To correct for that, to encourage people to keep buying, what did they start doing? They start putting a lot of money in the market, and they start basically, absolutely historically lowering the interest rate. So guess what was going to happen? When you basically give every small business, anybody and everybody that can breathe, a stimulus check of some kind or other, or loans, forgivable loans, all kinds of stuff. You put a lot of money. Historically, we have never put that kind of money in circulation. Guess what's going to happen? People start feeling a little bit okay with Corona. Okay, this is the new reality. And then everybody starts saying, we're going to put money. Well, guess what did they do? Anybody who got a loan was a small business owner. Anybody had any funds. Salaries started going up because people couldn't find workers. A lot of people are working, sitting at home, so on and so forth. So what starts happening is more and more people start dumping a lot of money into the real estate market. Well, there we go. I say that to say this. So guess what happened? If you had any properties for available, most properties were not coming on the market because your normal human being said, hey, I don't want people coming in my house. There's Corona, right? So people were naturally scared. They were naturally skittish. Then you put all this money into the market. People are like, okay, where am I going to put it? Except the stock market, where else are they going to go? Well, crypto went up. Guess why crypto went up? People are sitting at home in front of a computer. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to find something to do, something to invest their money in. Crypto was a part of it. Stocks were a part of it. Stocks went through the roof around the world in a lot of countries. Why? Not because the companies were making suddenly more money. It was because more and more people were dumping more money into the stock market and they wanted a piece of it. So stocks went up. No different with real estate. Real estate is a known quantity, meaning you can't build a house in a matter of 2 days, 10 days, 15 days, and there's more and more and more demand. Nobody's putting their properties on the market because they're scared of corona. Hence, supply goes down, demand is up because more and more people are dumping money in. More investors are dumping money in because they consider real estate brick and mortar. Well, boom, the property prices go through the roof. Simple supply and demand. There's no supply, there's a huge demand. There we go. And what that did in the flipping market was it basically, you could be a fool. You could have overpaid for the property. If you held the property through the first couple months of the shutdown, and then everything started opening up, guess what happened? You looked like an absolute genius because a property where reasonably you should have made 30, 40,000 bucks, you made 60, 70, 80, 90,000 bucks, and you thought, oh my God, I'm so good. Then you go do it again because you're like, I just made 80, 90,000 bucks. It's okay to overpay. Then it happens again, again, boom, until we come to the earlier part of this year. We all knew. If you didn't know that the inflation was going to hit, you're a complete buffoon. You're absolute buffoon if you did not know that the interest rate was going to, the inflation was going to go through the roof. You can't put artificial this much money into the system, and this much money was probably not needed in terms of a reasonable amount of money into the market. But guess what? Whether it was the Trump administration, you agree with it, you don't agree with it, doesn't matter, or it was the Biden administration. It's called politics. Nobody wants to be the president of a country or the world at that point, us being at the top of that, kind of for the pecking order, where people have a calamity that nobody's seen before. So they just kept dumping more and more and more and more money in the system, and it got flooded with so much money that a chunk of it ended up in real estate, whether it demanded it or not. Your interest rates are at 3%, 3.5%, and your inflation is at 5.5% and 6%. If you don't buy a lot of real estate, you're not smart, you're an idiot. Because think about it. You can get a loan for 3.5%, 4%. Your inflation is at 5 or 6%. What that means is if you're not buying more and more and more real estate, guess what's happening, right? It's free money. The loan might as well be at zero because it's a hedge against inflation. There is no country, you go anywhere in the world, look at the history, where you have your inflation at I would say, they say, well, it was 8 or 9%. I think it was 12 to 15% in reality. If you look at milk, if you look at the basic consumable products. So in most countries, if you have if your inflation is at 8 or 9%, your interest rates are going to be at 12 or 13. They have to be. Otherwise, to invest, in fact, you're getting paid to invest. And that was what was happening in the United States. So if you were not investing, you missed one of the biggest economic booms in this country, right? Now, does that mean everything's over? No. What I want to say is this. Last 2 years, what happened was abnormal, meaning that it is not realistic for anybody to buy a house for 150, 200,000 bucks and be able to sell it for 400,000 bucks and make 90 grand. That is not called normal. That is called absolutely abnormal to make 50, 60, 70, 80,000 bucks for a relatively small investment. Generally, on a good property, if you're putting about $15,000 or $20,000, if you're making $15,000 or $20,000 net on every 100,000, that is considered an absolute home run. Meaning, you sold the property for $250. Generally, if you're making more than 30,000 bucks, net cost, right? Net profit, I should say. That is considered a really, really good profit. Anybody that entered flipping last couple of years, they made an obscene amount of money, right? If you look at people from Mastery, brand new investors, they were making 50, 60, 80,000 bucks. They're like, oh my God. Guys, there have been times in history when the tech bubble happened, when things like that happened. If you caught it at the right time, you could really kill it. So Why do I say that? Because I wanted to put a frame around this whole thing. That it's not that you are necessarily smart. You were a little bit lucky. Maybe you did nice rehabs and you turned a phenomenal profit for a couple of years. Well, guess what? Today, that time is over. Yeah, and I say that to say this because a lot of people are like, well, it's over. Oh my God, now I can't buy real estate. No, no. All that simply means is this. We go back to how we were buying real estate 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, which is that if you are going to find a deal, it may require a lot of negotiations. It may require to beat down the seller quite a bit. It may require for you to go and look at a lot of properties, right? That's all that has happened. It's not like anything is over. But here's what I want to caution you. If you're in an A area, meaning an aspirational area, right? And in the last 2 years, the property went from, let's just say, $1 million to $2 million. You're not going to be able to sell your flip for $2 million, right? You're going to be able to sell it maybe for 1.6, 1.7. Now, does that mean, oh my God, the world is over? No. Last couple of years, people have made artificially ridiculous amount of money. Now, all of us, if we make any money, then nobody wants to lose it. Nobody wants to go backwards. Nobody wants to see you just bought a property for $2 million. You don't want to see your neighbor's house sell for 1.7 because guess what? Why? Because you are like, oh my God, if their house sold for 1.7, even if I'm not selling my house, they're like, oh, my house is maybe only worth 1.8. I'm of course going to think my house is more because supposedly every person's house that they live in it is better than the neighbor's house, right? And you're like, this doesn't work. A normal human being, a normal person that buys a house, they do not want to accept the reality that property prices from time to time, they will fall below. They're not going to be straight line up. There's no such thing. That's what happened in the last couple of years, that they just went up year over year at a pace that is unprecedented. That did not even happen in 2004, 5, and 6, right? The steep, basically, rate at which the prices went up, it didn't even happen at that time because the money was being printed like no tomorrow. And what had happened was pre-2008, you didn't have as many investors, people like us, buying properties. Today, the number of investors in the market that are buying properties is higher than it has ever been in United States history, ever. And the wealth is being concentrated, you've heard this over and over, amongst people who are richer, rich people are getting richer. I should actually modify that. Rich people are not getting richer. Wealthy people are getting wealthier. Rich is that person, you have $100,000 of salary, your neighbor's got a salary of 110, that is richer. That's not wealthier. Wealth is different, right? So what I'm trying to say is this, that it's not that if you are, so some of the markets, I want to kind of cover a little bit real quick about some of the markets. So if you look at the markets, that are the top 20 markets that have been affected the most. We're going to start with number 20. It's Dallas is number 20. Guess what's next to it? And you'll notice this trend that these markets are generally going to be south part of the country, southwest part of the country, way west part of the country. Generally, you're not going to see the mid part, the Rust Belt of America, going to be on this list. And these are 20 places that have the highest amount of declines, and the market is cooling the fastest in these places. And there's a reason for that. Why? Because the prices in these places went up like no tomorrow, right? Because there was a high demand. Some of these places had a high amount of migration, something like Florida, a lot of people moving. You are a small business owner, you get a check from the government for $300,000, $4,000, $500,000, $500,000. Well, you do some payroll with that, right? Because you have to keep your employees on payroll. But then the rest of it, guess what business owners did? A lot of people did this. They took that money. They're like, man, I'm going to go ahead and buy real estate. And then I can take the income from that real estate, go ahead and make my payroll or meet other obligations. Or if I have properties, I can take really good loans at long-term, very low interest rates because I have other assets. Now, we did that, but we paid it all back. But a lot of people did that. Imagine millions of people doing that at the same time. Of course, it's going to raise the prices. And then when you're doing a flip, you seem like a genius. Why? Because there's a lot of money in the market. It's that simple. So what happened? The next one after Dallas is Orlando, which is number 19. Then it's Tampa. Then it's Jacksonville. Bakersfield, California. Number 14, there's a tie for Portland, Oregon, and Stockton, California. Then you have good old Cape Coral, right? So we're investing right north of Cape Coral in a place called Charlotte County. But Cape Coral, one of the hottest places where you have so much new construction going on, it's not even funny. Of course, it's cooling. Why? Because the property prices were out of control. And now the interest rates have gone up. So people are like, hey, I can't afford to have a $3,000 or $4,000 payment. I can only afford a $2,500 or $2,700 payment. And a lot of people, unless they're just paying cash for a property, they buy payments. They don't buy the house. They're buying the payments that are related to the house. So if the payment goes up by $500-600 just because the interest rates changed, guess what happens? I mean, so a house that you could have bought for $300,000, right, when the payment was 3.5%, your payment is going to be a lot less than when today you're going to have to get a mortgage for 6.5%. It's literally almost double the amount, and people are not able to afford it. So the next one is Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh has been, that Research Triangle area has been one of the hottest markets, but yet guess what? It became even hotter in the last couple of years. Then the next one is Austin, Texas. Of course, hotter than hot, and people are like, oh, Austin, that never goes down. Well, guess what? It's coming down. The next one is Tacoma, Washington. No surprise. Next one is Northport, Florida, right? So Northport, Florida, here's the interesting part. Cape Coral is here, Northport is here, and we're investing in the middle. So when we went to Florida last year, I wanted to find a market that was boring, right? I didn't want Cape Coral. I didn't want Northport. Why? Because the prices have already peaked in those markets. Those were the hottest markets. Couldn't buy Sarasota because I could not get equity. Couldn't buy Tampa because it was hard to get equity. So a market which was a little bit sleepy, that was the Port Charlotte and the Charlotte County market, right? Everybody's like, well, why won't you go to Cape Coral? I don't want to buy in a market. That's just me. You may be different. But I don't want to buy properties that I'm going to build and I'm not going to sell. I want a nice market that is not very exciting. I don't want a dead market either, but I want that nice sweet spot in the middle where it's not very exciting, it's not dead. It's in the middle where there's long-term consistency. So the next one was Northport, number 9. Number 8 was Oakland, California. Then it's good old Phoenix, obviously has had a boom and a bust, big time. Next one is Denver. The beautiful city of Denver was there's a tie for number 5 on that one. Number 5 also is Sacramento. Number 4, San Diego, right? That's another market, obviously, West Coast market. San Jose is number 3 at 1.3 million. San Diego is at 800,000. I thought that's pretty cheap for San Diego, but you know, that's kind of where the average, but that's the average home. So yeah, that's pretty expensive, I guess. Then you have Vegas, and the number 1 market that's cooling the quickest is Seattle, Washington, right? So if you look at that whole list, it does not mean anybody who says, oh my God, flipping days are over. I hope you think that, and I hope you get out of real estate. I genuinely do, because your days are over. Guys, flipping is a cyclical business, right? It's good at sometimes. You get artificially high numbers at sometimes. Other times, if you want to stay in the business long term, you're going to have to ride the cycles up and down as they go up and down. If you're buying properties today and you're going to buy, let's just say after repair value on the property is 300,000, and you're going to be selling the property in March or April. Generally, if you're in a colder climate, right? Generally, if you're in a colder climate, we say, hey, you're going to get a bump up because you're going to put the property on the market when people haven't been buying properties in winter. You suddenly put a property end of February or March, you may get a 10% bump, 8% bump in the price range. This year, you're not going to get that 8% or 10% bump. If not, because you're going to have a lot of homeowners that are going to carry their property, or a lot of flippers that will carry their property through the winter, and they're going to do price reductions, and they're going to be competing with you. So if you're buying property today, and today's price is 300,000, meaning 6 months ago's price, because those are the sales you're comparing it to. Then moving forward, take about 97%, 95% of today's value, and then base all your numbers backwards based on that. Don't base it on full price. So if the price today is 300, and you plan to sell the property, I would basically do the numbers based on about 5% less. So what does that mean? That say, well, I'm only going to sell it for maybe 285, 290, and then you work backwards. Take 70% of that number minus rehab costs. So I wanted to address this because people keep making these videos over and over. Oh my God, it's over, right? Flipping is over, you're dead, and blah, blah, blah. Guys, listen, fear sells a lot of views. Fear sells a lot of clicks, right? Fear and FOMO. We all click on stuff whenever it's a bombastic news or when we think we're missing out and somebody else is having a great time and we're not. So having said that, this is Andrew Holmes. If you're not a part of what we do, make sure you go to, what's the channel, Lori? Oh, that's the Facebook group. Yeah. Oh, okay. So go to the Facebook group, which is Burr Cashflow Investors on Facebook, and join us, be a part of the community, and I will talk to you guys on Friday, because today is Wednesday. Am I losing track of my days? No, today is Wednesday, so I'll talk to you guys Friday, and we're going to try to do this, even though I think I'm supposed to speak at a meeting at 5:30. So we're going to make it from 5:30 to about 6:15, 3 days a week, which is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Talk to you guys soon.